Thank you very much, Hadi. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our panel discussion, Education in Indonesia. Education inevitably plays a key role in the development of countries, of course, including Indonesia. The past decade has seen major changes in the structure of the education system and the schooling trajectories of Indonesian children and adolescents. Enrollment rates at all levels continue to increase, but the quality of education remains low and has not improved. What is causing this, and what is the solution? Education in Indonesia, the book, tries to answer these questions. This book delves into the major developments in education in Indonesia, drawing on the expertise of some of the most knowledgeable people in the field. This book identifies the challenges facing the sector and offers recommendations on how these challenges could be overcome. There are 4 people in our panel today to discuss just this. Allow me to introduce them one by one. On my right side is Mr. Baek Lee from Budy. Thank you for being here, Pak Tae. And then next to Pak Tae is Mr. Gavin Jones from the National University of Singapore. Thank you very much. And on my left side is Professor Pratikno, Rector of Gajah Mada University. And next to Professor Pratikno is Frater Oromo Baskoro Puji Nugroho, former headmaster of Canisius College. So, to start our discussion this afternoon, I shall invite Mr. Gavin Jones to give your insights on the book.
Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure to be involved with editing this book, and although I've worked on and off on Indonesian issues in Indonesia over time, education issues, this really helped to set me thinking about a number of the key issues that came through. Of course, many of them have been discussed today, but to me, just let me mention a couple of what I feel are some of the key issues facing Indonesia. And, it's clear qualitatively things are moving in the right direction. The education enrollment rates are going up. As we've heard, though, there are real problems on the quality side of education. And reading the various chapters that were included in this book, a lot of the issues seem to have something to do with the teacher force in one way or another. There has been the issue of the training and quality of teachers. A lot of them have been underqualified. That's changing fairly rapidly over time. A lot more of the teachers now are better qualified, and we have the accreditation program. But as you heard in the previous session, there are problems with the accreditation program. And one thing it does, of course, is to greatly raise the salaries of teachers, which in many ways is a good thing. But in some ways, it raises the education costs very substantially without, up to this point, indicating any great improvement in the quality of education. And so that seems to be a major issue. One chapter in the book, by the way, which hasn't been discussed very much today, is the one by Professor Bjork. And, one of the key points he made is that when teachers are going entry, this leads to a different sort of a mindset, and he believes that, if teachers are to play a proper educative role, perhaps that tradition of the key things on a go and entry should be changed. Anyway, there are many aspects of that to discuss, but one further point that I would want to make, and I've been concerned about this for a long, long time, and that is the equity of access. And of course, not only me, many people are concerned about that. And equity of access to education is a problem in all countries. I think every country you go to, if you say, are the kids of the cleaners, are they as likely to get to university as the kids of the university professors or the public service? And it's clear what the answer is in every country. But it is perhaps particularly severe in Indonesia compared with some countries. And sorry, I'll just get my facts together here. Very recently, and this is not in the book, we at the 2010 census in Indonesia, and we were able to link the education of the children. And if the parents have primary school education or less, this is their children who are aged 20 to 24 living with them, 70% of the children of those with primary education or less have reached tertiary education. If the parents had SMP, 20% of their kids got to tertiary education. If the parents had SMR, 43% of their kids got to tertiary education. If the parents themselves had tertiary education, 77% got to tertiary education. That's a vast difference in opportunity, and of course, aside from the equity aspects, there is an efficiency aspect as well, because if ability is spread randomly through the population, as I think it is, then it means there's an enormous loss of potential by not, having this big mass of children with considerable potential have much chance of going through their education. I hope I haven't taken it too long.
Not at all. Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. And of course, there's going to be a Q&A session after. If you have many questions, and I'm sure you do have so many questions because the content of this book is really interesting. There are so many problems, and this book does try to find solutions to the educational problems in Indonesia. And I would like to invite Fatih to give his insights.
Well, actually, I'm a replacement of Salil, who was sick. He's now, he barely speaks, so he asked me to say. I can, of course, talk more about our own chapter, because Gavin and Daniel will speak better about the book. But I'd like to add a few things which I neglected to say. First of all, about education in general, there is a worrisome continuation of a pattern already established during the Netherlands Indies. That is that all the best universities are in Java, and to a lesser extent, University of Indonesia, Gajah University, Institute of Pertanian Bogor, Baru Institute of Technology, University of Ponegoro, University of Erlangen. None of the top universities are in the regions. And not only that, there is also, although I would say that the two outside of Java are Hasanuddin University in Makassar and Andalas University in Padang. A worrisome thing which also reflects the disparity in the regional development is that Eastern Asia is very much different. For instance, I saw a ranking of universities prepared by Professor Sandra, the former Director General of Higher Education. You see the top, and I found that he made 5 classifications, and the bottom one was a university I visited in Tanah, Hairun University, which number 5, which reflects the enormous regional disparity in development, including in education in Indonesia. And I think Professor Sali has already emphasized, our government neglects Eastern Indonesia. So it will not be surprising if there are separate tendencies. What about University of Patimura in Ambon? What University of Hairun? What University Samratulangi in Manado? These universities, no one talks about it. And the worrisome is that when they are provided by scholarships to to study in universities in Java, there will be a brain drain from these people. So this means that the disparity will be rapidly increasing. That's my first point. Secondly, as I think in Daniel's presentation already showed, there's something wrong with the curriculum. The new curriculum, despite the many protests which have been expressed, yes, it includes religion. Religion should be taught in a family, in a family service, in a mosque, in churches, in temples, but not in schools. Moreover, I think how can you teach religion as a discipline? I think most of the people will just sleep. And I would sleep if I was still as young as they are. Another problem is that as Daniel's presentation showed, according to the PISA, our proficiency in mathematics and science and English are very inadequate. And that's how a country can progress. If you look at the curriculum of Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, there's a lot of emphasis. So these people are under enormous stress. But that is why, I look at the Times Higher Education Supplement. The top in this Asia Pacific are ENU, University of Melbourne, and National University of Singapore. And I looked at the Times, I scrolled down and I looked at the universities. And I saw even University of Indonesia doesn't even rank in the top 400 universities. Yeah. Because I'm a graduate from University of Indonesia. So that's also part of the question. That's why better Indonesians or Indonesian parents with higher income send their students overseas. Most of the students go to Australia. I think it's Periodic here. Periodic told me that was in 1997 that there were more than about 20 sources in which students were studying in Australia. And most of them, of course, are fully paying students. Because OSCE, I think, only provides 450 scholarships to Indian students. So all these scholarships are paid for by their parents. And those people will either stay in Australia or in America or in Britain, or when they come back, they will occupy the better positions, say in business, and that will increase. So that will lead to bifurcation in the society. So they will occupy the top executive functions in companies, foreign or international companies. So it is not, I think this is one small aspect of the fact that income inequality is increasing. Last year, one of the indicators of income inequality is the Gini ratio. Last year, for many years during the order and the post-reformation period, it was about 0.35, 36, 37. Now it's 0.41, and maybe this year, maybe 0.42, which is very significant. So there will be in Indonesia increasingly divided by incomes, which means a lot of attention from our government. Also, I would like to point out that university autonomy is absolutely essential for developing a top-rate institution. Last year, I wrote an article in Kompas after I had read a report prepared by a committee headed by then BGD, Olympic Autonomy. As we know, Singapore is a very authoritarian society, much more authoritarian than ours. But this group headed by BGD said that to provide, that to develop a top higher institution, you need autonomy. Autonomy in deciding the curriculum, autonomy in deciding the appointments and the promotions of faculty members. And this, so last year, a bill was proposed about higher education in Indonesia, about autonomy, which was rejected by I don't know. But despite many appeals, among others by two former director generals of higher education, Professor Sandra and Professor Hamid, they are very two respected professors. And they appeal, in fact, Professor Hamid told me that he appealed before the parliament pleading for autonomy, which was rejected. And so there was a storm of protests, also for private universities. And the Minister of Education and Culture, Professor Menon, said, okay, I realize all these shortcomings, but we will take economies for this in as regulations, which is the second best, if not the third best regulation. I think for the time being, okay now.
Thank you very much, Fatih. Wow. Education in Indonesia is indeed problematic, huh? Okay. Now we will hear some insights from Fatih. Definitely, specifically, this is about the tertiary education, yeah, Prof.
Thank you. This is definitely to continue and confirm what Fatih has presented just a few minutes ago. The university autonomy is absolutely essential for developing top-rate university in Indonesia. That's what we are struggling at the moment. And as Sukma mentioned here, that just an hour before I arrived here, I just from the MK, the Constitutional Court, defending the law on higher education, following the petition from the three group of Indonesian citizens to the Constitutional Court. Anyway, I'll continue from the yes, that's right. I started with hot issues in higher education in Indonesia. At the moment that we have law on higher education, the law number 12, 2012, which that's what have just presented by Budy. That given two option for the state university. The first one is the conventional public university, state university. This is, we call it BLU. Means that highly controlled by the government and highly centralized. And the second one is the status, they call the PTN pada hukum, means that the university given status as a legal entity, which given quite high degree of autonomy for the university. That's already given actually since 2000, early 2000, to the started with 4 universities: University of Indonesia, Universitas Gadjah Mada, IPB, and ITB. At that time, they called BHMN. So the 4 universities, the 4 higher education institutions, have implemented a significant degree of autonomy for approximately 1 decade, and have shown quite significant improvement on their performance. And however, then the law is petitioned to the Constitutional Court, and then the law was cancelled, and then new law was stipulated last year. However, again, at the moment there are 3 petitions to the Constitutional Court to cancel the law, the new law. So it's really very uncertain for us in managing higher education in Indonesia at the moment. So the first and the second petition directly attack to the 2 articles on the law, which provide a degree of autonomy to the state university. And the third petition, which is now still in session in the Constitutional Court, even try to cancel all the whole law on higher education. So this morning, the 3 universities, Universitas Indonesia, Budy, and ITB, proposed to the Constitutional Court to become pihak terkait, means the what do you call it, related party. So pemohon, which means those who sent the petition to the Constitutional Court, and then termohon, this is the government who proposed the law. And then we propose ourselves as a pihak terkait to give the empirical evidence what has been happening and in managing university in Indonesia, especially in our own university. So again, the governance in higher education in Indonesia is very unstable, very uncertain, changing over time, and we spend a lot of energy, a lot of time to be the really bureaucrats, and the rector is almost nothing, almost the same as the Kepala Subdinas Pendidikan in Kecamatan or something. So exactly, so we spend a lot of our time. I became rector in the last 1 year, starting May last year, and since the first week in my office, I spent a lot of time for defending the audit from the BPKP and so on, and then again the petition from the Constitutional Court, and then we have to move, transition because of uncertain regulation. Then we have to change from the BHMN system to become a BRU system with new system of financial management reporting, and it's a huge work on bureaucracy. So again, rector is just very similar to soccer, satuan kerja in we don't need a professor person actually. If the management is like that, so I will try to elaborate more detail what that has been argued by Pak Al-Hil, that the focusing on Universitas Gadjah Mada, that's my experience. So the last up to early 2000, we were BTN morning. It means very highly centralized and highly privatized under the control of the Ministry of Education, and then we got the autonomy since 2000. Actually, the law, the government regulation was stipulated in 2000, and then since then we try to exercise the new system, the autonomy system, under the status of the IMN. And but then this is the period. Now we are in a transition, uncertain transition, and we don't know what will be the new system in the next few months. We still wait the decision from the Constitutional Court. So the Universitas Gadjah Mada, of course, as it's mentioned by Bati, that the Bumantri have mentioned that the government have allocated 20% of national budget for education, but we have to mention here, actually only 20% of the total was allocated to the Ministry of Education. So because 20% of the total budget for education means distributed for any function of education under the Ministry of Manpower, under the Ministry of Youth, under the Ministry of Home Affairs, 11, as far as I remember, 11 ministries. So actually, because for the public, they think that 20% budget for education means for the Ministry of Education. But in fact, only 20% of them for education, and this is the figure for 2012. So the under the in the profile of Gadjah Mada, our budget is approximately 24% is coming from the sarjana student fee. And then another 15%, 20% from the pasca sarjana for graduate school. Then the rest, and then only less than 20% is government subsidy. So the government subsidy is less than 1/3 of the financing Universitas Gadjah Mada at the moment. So even so, we try, of course, our best to become well. Sometimes we go on 100 rank, but sometimes miss from the list. This is our struggle, and of course we try to improve from time to time. I'm trying to say that during the autonomy era, during the 2000, early 2000 and then the end of 2010, we have been able to increase our performance, to improve our performance very significantly. For instance, it is accreditation, and then this is the activities on the community services. This is one of the that UGM try to focus on, and also means that we have also tried to serve to many regions in Indonesia all the time. This increased very significantly, and our numbers of application indexes in the Scopus also increased quite significantly since we started autonomy in 2000. So the increase during the autonomy is quite significant, and we try to do better since then if we got still autonomy in managing university. And of course, then we have more flexibility to develop our network, especially we are very active in ASEAN University Network as well as the developing global partnership. But at the same time, we have to be concerned with helping the poor family. That's what the Universitas Gadjah Mada did in the last decade. That
when we have the autonomy, then we try to, even in our internal university, to do kind of a cross-subsidy. The rate of, instead of giving subsidy for all students, we prioritize giving subsidy for the poor family. Then, with the limited of funding from the university, for the government, then we allocate more and more subsidy for the student for the poor family, because Kacamata is the Universitas Desa, as a Universitas Revolusi. Yeah. So, Pak Sufyan, the first rector that has a strong commitment for the cross-subsidy. So that's why then we have increased our numbers of students coming from the eastern part of Indonesia. Although it's very difficult even for the recruitment, to get them in is difficult, as well as to get them out, successfully.
It's difficult because they inadequacy.
They have very low foundation for getting higher education because of the problem on the secondary and the quality of the secondary school. This is one of the problems, but not because of the problem economy, because we have a strong commitment that all of our students have no difficulty on finance, because we can provide, the subsidy scholarship, and we try to, this cross subsidy as I mentioned. That's why this is the distribution of students according to the economic status of their parents, and you see that the quote-unquote, the rich, the mampu people, the portion is much smaller compared to the portion of from the poor family.
I think 15 million is it per month?
That's right, per month income. That's the monthly income. This is the figure and for 2012, and we have calculated that we can improve the subsidy for the poor family. What I'm trying to say is that the autonomy for the university is make us, of course, more flexible and more responsive, and less energy we spend for bureaucracy, and the flexibility for doing research. And of course we can start doing research in the late budget year, because when we are under the bureaucracy of the government, we can spend the money on maybe June. Then we do research starting on June up to November. Then we have to send the report on December. So improving the quality of education and improving research and also community services. But at the same time, we commit ourselves to helping, supporting, developing, increasing access of the poor family for higher education, qualified education in Indonesia. Saya kira begitu saja. Terima kasih atas kesempatannya. Terima kasih Pak.
Thank you very much, Professor. Our next speaker, I managed to pre-interview Romo Baskoro earlier, and his concerns regarding teachers, as mentioned by Mr. Jones earlier, that he says there are 3 problems with our teachers nowadays. Is that true, Romo?
Actually, we can talk many things about teachers. I think these 3 main issues I would like to share. Well, my dear brothers and sisters, actually in Indonesia, anybody can talk about education from any angles. We can talk anything about education. But after finishing reading this book, what comes to my mind is that word, about teacher. The first one, the teacher in Indonesia is very poor in competence. Very poor. Imagine the average score of national teacher competency test. You can guess.
Anybody like to guess?
4.2.
What does that mean, Romo?
With a passing score of 7.0. This is national data. It is unfortunate that such data are never used to develop programs for professional teacher development. In comparison results of the similar test among private school teachers show that their academic competence is very good, but their pedagogical competence is poor. It may be partly caused by the absence of highly qualified pre-service teachers training colleges. You know that no, we have no teacher training anymore. We have no more IK, teacher institution. I don't know what is the real reason. We prefer to send the students after finishing their high school to university rather than to teacher training. All teachers training colleges were transformed into universities in the 90s. Although this institution may have a better look, they may not do enough to prepare teachers. It is worth noting as well that 55% of teachers, mostly in elementary schools, do not hold bachelor's degree. That's national data. That's the first one. The second one, teachers poor welfare. We know about that. So that's why nobody wants to be a teacher. In reality, teacher salary standard is very low. Very low. It is true that current certification allowance is around 2 million rupiah per month. Significantly adds teachers take home pay. We know about that. However, this is most beneficial for teachers in public schools. Private school teachers only receive the allowance after their public schools counterparts do, and the quota is limited. The ratio is around 10 for public school and 2 for private school. That's the reality. This policy allows public school teachers to earn around 6 million per month. For instance, public school teachers in Jakarta have enjoyed financial support under Sutioso's administration at the time. Non-certified private school teachers earn on average around 3 million per month. Just 3 million per month. And we know that 1.7 million teachers are public servants, and the rest 1.2 million are of private schools and or under honor-based contract. The third one, teachers unevenly distributed around the country. Schools in cities have enough teachers to teach, Even many schools in Jakarta are oversupplied with teachers. Consequently, administrators tend to manipulatively assign them with fake teaching loads so as to allow their teachers to meet the minimum certification requirement, namely 24 teaching hours per week. Underqualified teachers are assigned to teach in remote areas. Imagine what the quality of teaching is in those areas and what the students from these areas really learn. That's all what I would like to share. Actually, I have so many things to talk, to share, but it's really limited in its point, about the teachers. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Robin. Now we open the Q&A session, so anybody who would like to ask questions, yes, please, sir.
My name is Budy. I would like to direct my question to Mas Praitno and Pak Mas. The first one on Mas Praitno is I certainly support your fight for University of Budy, and hopefully and good luck with your fight on that. However, I do want to also you to respond on what has been mentioned in the chapter of the book that requiring within the university a more progressive reform. There are four aspects that I know from the chapter. Number one is that this attitude of trying to make self-breeding. You always only accept those who graduated from your university. Cross universities movement of faculty is very, very low. And that is very important to generate new ideas, new tradition. And so you are not stuck within that kind of concept. And I don't know what happened in UGM, but my guess, those who faculty member that is graduated outside UGM must be relatively small. The second issue that the book cover is on providing incentives, the right incentive for publication and conducting research. So far, the incentive is more toward being in a position of structure. If you become the head of the department, you get more nomination rather than if you publishing more. So how much, how far is actually university willing to change this incentive? The third aspect is on the hierarchy within the university. So one of the things that I was very surprised is that in Indonesia, still if you are going to be the main supervisor of PhD, you have to be a professor. It's not happening anywhere in other developed countries. In Australia, any faculty member can be the main supervisor. The cool thing about this young faculty member being able to supervise, they bring new idea that they just learn. And so they're providing movement of ideas to master. Then they have to wait 10 years in a situation that currently is stagnant. They probably lost many of their ability by then, and then they have a chance to supervise PhD students. So let me focus on this. And my question to Dr. Vasco, to me right now, the reform in middle education, like high school, you have the opportunity to take different curriculum, like curriculum international, between national and but it was very surprised to me that actually not many is actually using those opportunities to actually create a different style of teaching, different style of curriculum. It seems to me the majority of high school is stuck with the national curriculum. Although they didn't agree, so why don't they just move out from those things? There's a movement, a big movement of move out from this national curriculum, so the government will see. So that's
Thank you very much, Pak Budy. Mungkin tadi you can answer these questions. Would you be more comfortable if we do it in Indonesian or there are more Indonesians in the room, so I assume maybe it's going to be so much clearer. Bilingual is good? Okay. Alrighty, well, for example, Romo, a good question from Pak Budy earlier. He says, is it actually possible to create your own curriculum? Because obviously our national curriculum is not good. We all know that. So why don't we just make it ourselves? Is that possible, Romo?
I think so. It's possible. But again, Pak Budy, the problem of teacher competence. Not all schools are available. I mean, not all schools are good teachers. Even to improve the quality of teacher learning activity. Moreover, and we want to develop our school using international curriculum like that. But it's true that our national curriculum is very, very bad. It's pity for the children of Indonesia during this time. That's really true. And you want, I can show which one is maybe we can say that not only that very bad calamity. That's our children will not be learner, but the victim of education. That's true.
Okay, from all the four speakers here, so what kind of curriculum is actually ideal for Indonesia? Maybe if Prativi, I can have that one mic so that each side can contribute answers, because we do have a lot of problems here. Teachers, curriculum, inequality of education access, autonomy. These are huge basic issues, but it keeps going in Indonesia, and we are letting it happen. Yes, okay, we have so many teachers who are unqualified. Okay, maybe Mr. Jones or Pate or Professor Pratikno would like to say something about the teachers. So what is the solution then to improve our teachers? Because according to the book, which is quite surprising, the numbers of teachers who are qualified are actually increasing. But there's a mismatch between the teacher's qualification and the quality of the education that is transferred to the students. So what is wrong there, Mr. Jones?
Hanya saya yang berani menggunakan bahasa Indonesia. Itu menurut saya. I don't want to say much because the others on the panel know much more about me, but I think what you about teachers in Indonesia. But anyway, one thing that came through in the book about teachers is that when the salaries are increased, and you mentioned that the salaries have been very low, and in the past it meant that teachers had to often take second, third jobs, and this partly accounted for absenteeism and so on. But I think the evidence seems to be that even where the salaries have gone up, absenteeism is still a problem. So this comes back, it's not just a matter of salaries, and it's not just a matter of education. There is something else perhaps to do with the sense of responsibility and perhaps other factors which I'm not so aware of.
Yeah, so I'm confused because I was also a teacher once, and I'm very concerned about this issue. Education in Indonesia is getting worse, and I've been talking to all of these speakers. So, do you all think that the problem is actually with the government? Do you think the government is the only party that can actually make a reformation within our educational system? Yes? I hear some yeses. Yes? Anybody would like to speak probably? Let's just have an open discussion here. Yes? Yes, sir. Please, yes. Change the minister? That's an idea.
My second chance, sorry. Thank you very much. My name is Yose. Thank you very much. But I start my discussions with platform that I will see Indonesia's education sector within the context of the development of Indonesian industrial education industrial service. One thing that hamper the competitiveness within this industrial education service in Indonesia is because there's the hiccup of Indonesia in adapting a new system in the context of the global education or international division of labor. So we have more similarity with other curriculum right now than we had years ago. So I don't know what is the problem of adapting this new system, but as Christopher George pointed out very sharp in his book, is teachers in Indonesia have different background of educations, and they are grown in a different culture of education. That's one thing. The second thing is the autonomy that Pak Teis explained and the autonomy that Pak Pratikno said is completely two different education autonomy. The one is the academic autonomy, and this one from the Indonesian new education law is the management autonomy, and it can be mixed because this is completely a different autonomy. You cannot have autonomy in designing the curriculum, especially if you learn the structure of Indonesian higher education management, which is the government still have more influence in directing the trajectory of Indonesian curriculum and management in higher education. That hampers the competitiveness of Indonesian higher education in developing themselves with the facilities and fund that they receive right now. So, for example, like this, if that academic autonomy really applied in Indonesia, can Indonesia stand with the changes of curriculum in history discipline? How can you explain in the history curriculum in Indonesia about what happened in the order or in 65? But of course, it will benefit the Indonesian students if we can understand that. The gray area of our history, it can contribute to the directions of Indonesian development because we can learn more clearly about what happened in the past, what is our strength and what is our weakness. So that is two different autonomy that we are talking about right now. But as a solution, I think whether it will come from the government or it comes from other sectors, I think all we can do is to keep optimistic and keep supporting the reform of education in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. And so, the curriculum. From our speakers here, what do you think is the ideal curriculum for Indonesia? Because obviously we all know that the Indonesian education curriculum at the moment is such a mess.
Yeah.
What do you think about it?
I think our curriculum from primary school through the university system is too overloaded. In high school, both in the junior as well as senior high school, I think the number of courses should be limited. First of all, we own all these religion, Pancasila, and so on. You learn it as I said, in church, in mosque, so all these global values. What you need is, first of all, you need the history of Indonesia, the geography of Indonesia. I think if I ask one of you, do you know where Tidore is? Do you know where Tanah is? Do you know where Indari is? See, most people wouldn't know. Secondly, you need history, Indonesia's history, and it was well also once as a course in global history. But because history gives you your identity that you are an Indonesian citizen. And I see many of these younger, maybe nephews or so, they come from Australia, from America, they studied at MBAs and so on. And I think they are very smart in their field, but I find them utterly boring because they don't know anything about Indian history. They don't know about Amakura, for instance. They don't know about Perang Diponegoro. In fact, I have at home a fantasy book by Peter Carey, about the Java. 600 pages. I think the awareness of your own country's history gives you an identity that I'm an Indonesian. What has it been? No better, but no worse than any other national. Secondly, you need very good training in chemistry and physics and in mathematics. Absolutely. If you look at the curriculum of Korea, of China, of Taiwan, of Singapore, they play a good and they play a great emphasis.
Do you think the government knows about this? Do you think the government is actually aware that these are the important things that students need to learn? Not the religion,
I've worked at Libby, my former headset, Steve Libby, since 1 September 59. Most of them were not born. I'm by far the oldest. I'm 78 now. And I remember that at that time, and that's why NUS is so much better than we. And or University of Malaysia, University of Bangsa Malaysia, they are much better than ours. Universitas of Amasa University. So I think you need a lot of great emphasis on that. And certainly, because our language, English is not yet you need absolutely a very good proficiency in English.
But they're trying to eliminate English now, sir.
Yeah, that's also total disaster. We will be just, we will be, as a nation, we will be giants, but as intellectuals, we will be midget. We will totally, I've never been a minister, fortunately not, because I would become also as they are smart ministers. Minister of Finance, Dr. Hadi he's a top economist. They are very, very good ministers, but they are also they are also very stupid ministers. I won't mention that because I may be assassinated. But English is absolutely essential. And I would suggest, so keep the course only to 6, not 14 or so, because and also these courses just rote learning. Indonesian students have to learn to think independently. And that's the great, frankly speaking, Because of my age, I went to Dutch schools. And I honestly said, I've never been, and God will never be brilliant. At best, slightly above average. But I love going to school. Because my Dutch teachers, they were, these of them were rather eccentric, but they inspired me to search for learning. Books. I love reading books. Love reading books in English, in Dutch, in Indonesian, sometimes also in German. I'm now reading a biography by Sebastian Hafner about Hitler, because I was one of the same as Hitler. And it widens your horizon. History widens your horizon. And also, it gives you some extra dimension in your personality. And so that's why English, for instance, is very important. I think my English is for average. I've been, 9 years ago, I was asked by the director of the Institute of Economics Research to become the editor of Economies of Indonesia. It's the oldest economics journal. And I said to my wife, I know why they asked me. Not because I'm a great economist. I am not a great economist. I know myself. But because my English is much better, because I know Dutch. And I spend sometimes articles, certain articles, I spend a whole day just, apart from the contents, just improving the English of these articles. So, besides you, also, good profession in Indonesia. I'm often asked to read the papers of my colleagues, and now they are not asked anymore because they say Pak T is terlalu kejam. They cannot even write good Indonesian. How can you write good English? That's very essential.
So there is something wrong then, sir. Do you think that there is actually something wrong with the books in schools nowadays? Because I experienced that as well. You said that our educational system is basically rote learning. We do not encourage our students to analyze, to criticize. So, and I was growing up not understanding what I was reading. I was an underachiever. And then when I went to university, I became the best graduate. It's because I understood. Suddenly everything makes sense. So do you think there's actually a problem in our books? Anybody?
But also in the faculty.
In the faculty. But what about the books itself? The content of the books, it's unintelligent.
There's also one thing. When you go to Ramini or to Gunung, you see a lot of books translated into Indonesian.
Yes.
And when you read the translations, it doesn't make sense. Because they follow the syntax of English. I can read. One of my books in English was translated to Indonesian. I went through because I say it's responsible. It's not responsibility of the things. Because after all, it's true. I went through the book, every page. No, I don't have tuberculosis. Because the book was completed by Soesastro, the younger brother of Pramono. He was very good. But other materials are not very good. And I say it's a crime for authors to let their book translate and then don't go over the translation. Because I think it's a crime for the readers, for the students, because they cannot make sense. Just go to Wikipedia and look at it, whether the edition is good or not.
So do you think the quality of our books, especially for students, are good or not good or just okay? What do you all think?
One thing is the curriculum. There's books and curriculum is same. The good curriculum or the best curriculum, the best book or good book should be contextual. What I mean by contextual? Contextual means needed by student.
Okay, such
But
as.
it is not needed by student. Don't bring it. Don't bring it. Not like the next curriculum or curriculum 13.
What is the next curriculum?
That's not needed by, that's not contextual.
What is it like?
It's not needed. Needed means who knows what the needs of the students?
The teachers.
Teachers, you know. So the curriculum must be designed by the teacher, not by the government like now.
Yes.
For the next curriculum. That's everything created, designed by the government.
Can you say no?
That's not contextual.
Can
That-
schools say no?
That's right. That's not easy. But I'm the one who anti curriculum 13, you know, with most educators in Jakarta and Indonesia. But yeah, we can say that's not easy, you know. But because what is the reason? For the private school, maybe we can do that. But for the public schools, it's not possible.
How many public schools and private schools are
And
there?
this is, if you want to know about the number of our public or private education, this is the public school. There's a pyramid. There's from the primary, secondary, and higher or tertiary. But the private, there's the seats like this, upside down in the pyramid. There's the primary, secondary, there's a little number, but the big numbers on higher education. That's the problem. We know that, but I have no data yet, you know. But I'm sure that most public basic education, or I mean primary education, is low in quality. But the number of public school in primary education is very, so many, huge. You can imagine what will happen when they are going to the tertiary education.
So this is very right.
That's part of our problem, you know. But again, the next curriculum, that's part of the problem.
So how do we say no to the next curriculum? It seems that the government, when they decide, like, okay, we think that this curriculum is really good, even though we know that it's not good, that this is what we're going to apply. You just take it, you don't contest it, that's it. But that is not good for our generation, our next generation. So what can we do, educators, to stop that from happening?
Here's the minister.
Minister.
The minister.
Who do you think? Okay, sir.
I'm very sad, you know, and all the educators, most of the educators of Indonesia, sent to be Sendu. Monday night, decided by the minister and our representative in Senayan. They decided that curriculum 13 will be implemented tomorrow, next school year. Means
Which is
middle of July.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they're very sad. Yeah. Very sad.
I think
Yes, sir.
the situations of education at present in Indonesia is in the lowest level. You know why? Because minister, the parliament, and educators in general, public in general, they do not have a heart anymore for education. You see, to pay attention and the importance of education. I am the coordinator of 3,000 institute, private, whereas the government own only 86 universities. We own about 1,000 universities. This minister is not willing to accept and to see us to discuss.
Have you ever tried, sir, with
Oh yes,
And then what did he say? What did the minister say?
Oh yes, I've been having a judicial review, and I won, fortunately. So every law that is passed by the government, by the parliament and the government, is always a gap in there, mistakes in there. And we made the review in the constitutional court.
Yes.
And we usually won.
Do you think you can actually do the same thing with this one?
Difficult, but sometimes we don't have the time and the money, to have the endurance to fight.
So what is the future of the Indonesian education?
Well,
Yes, sir.
I think one of the problem is because the ambition of the government to regulate.
No, because we in Indonesia still believe in what's that? Etatism. That everything should be controlled by the government. You see? And that is the main problem of Indonesia. Although we already retract that ruling, but it remains. You see? And then for budget is no complaint anymore. We have not 20% of the budget. That means 314 billion for education. But instead for developing curriculum, developing teachers training and so on, they use it for boss. Just a gift. And boss means bosso. Problem. And then they do not just go to lesson. That is the problem. And unfortunately, this owner of private education, generally speaking, is also less than concerned. No heart anymore. Yeah. Parents know hard to educate their children. That's why there are lots of fighting outside. Narcoba everywhere because we are in a crisis of education, basically. So what we can do, actually, to change this government, to change this minister. And I told the president, change
How do you change the minister? Maybe you should meet the parliament.
because he is not the minister for education.
I know, sir.
He is only a joker, you see. And that is the problem. So if you are talking about these things, and especially on legal things and so on, yeah, theoretically, you are beating around the bush. Because it will fall into what we call a deaf ear. And then it is also the national environment and economy. Education is considered now as a commercial commodity.
Exactly.
And that is the whole nation supporting that. So we have to stop that. Education is a constitutional duty. But everybody is participating, even the private one, because they can easily get money from selling this commodity called education. And the easier you get, is the better. The cost is lower. So this is the whole damn thing. So stop it. And to stop this, I think, if you make a report and it's very good and sharp report with all the data, we can use that to show. Because the WTO, the foreign companies, not school, companies can open a school here. You see? So what does it mean? It means that after 15 years, we do not have Indonesians anymore. We have senior. You see? Because all the boys and girls now, they are walking around here. Hello, Dad. Good morning, Dad. They do not know Papa or Mkong or Papa. So that is the whole set. And then you only fight for the small things. No way. If you will fight, it should be thinker on this and once for all say, stop this. This is the future of our nation, the future of our country, the future of the civilizations of Indonesia. So, this report is only based on this nothing. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you very much. So this report should make the changes. This book is helping to make the changes, and we educators have to make the changes, right? Is that correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay, we can't change the minister right now. We may have to wait until 2014, but the movement needs to happen now. From us, the people, pushing it so that we elect the right leader. Anyway, I'm just as frustrated as you are. Yes, Professor Radhiko, you would like
Well,
to...
yes, because I need to respond to Budy's questions. Again, what Budy mentioned is exactly that the government too ambitious to regulate many things. Because the autonomy on academic issues will be not easily implemented, difficult to achieve without any, for instance, on the management on human resource. Up to now, perguruan tinggi like the big state university in Indonesia is still, regular citizen. So we have recruited from young, then we have to bring them up to become a senior professor. Our system do not provide, the opportunity for the mobility of the staff. Even we are not, there is no system which provide us to recruit, senior researcher. For instance, if we want to stay in Jogja, we don't have any system to set you as a professor. The system is just like the regular citizen. That's one of our problems to the sport mobility, why the staff mobility, or even to recruit very highly senior researcher overseas is difficult to us. Because then, for instance, if Budy want to stay in GM, then our system will ask, pangkat golongannya apa ini? 3B, 3C, 4A, 4B, and that's right. 3A, That's
This is not full. You want to teach, that's not the way like that. If you are rector or you are head of institute, I need this teacher. And put it there.
That's what I'm trying to say is that the state university, I think what I'm trying to say is in line with what you said about that university, the government regulate a lot on human resource management, regulate a lot on financial management, and which finally do not support on how we can use quote-unquote the economy or academic and improve our performance. So as Pak Budy mentioned, then for instance, if state university want to recruit very highly staff, senior professor overseas, means that we have to pay on the project basis, because the regular system
do not provide us the opportunity to do that. Otherwise, you will pay you as a PNS pemula. Otherwise, so the only thing is that then we can, if we have a quote-unquote research project and then we pay on the project, not on the human, human resource management, our system, our staffing system. This is the regulation. Many regulations go down to the university. That's what we are struggling this morning up to now. That we need the autonomy, not only to provide a freedom of speech, but also provide autonomy for us, for in staffing management, financial management, that we still, of course, under the scrutinize of the public, under the public auditing and so on, and we need to be accountable as well. So this is what we are struggling up to now. Otherwise, we will be like, as I mentioned, like regular dinas, like dinas, ada dinas di pemerintahan.
So, I suggest this education should be started by you, sir, and all the rector and very prominent teachers and so on. Get together, make it a movement, like Kacamata has done years ago, where they are sending their students down to the villages and teach, and then if they come back after 2 years, they will be received and get some scholarship. And it should become a movement. Because you could not do it through bureaucratic and asking all these committee questions. Because they are all deaf. Budy and Daglak. Japanese words is very strong. The difference. So, I do not know. But this is our future. It is more important than the inflations that Dr. Tay would like to do. More than any economic discrepancy and so on. This is not needed. So, get it. And I will support swasta. Make a revolution on education.
Yes. Education. That's good. I agree. Any more questions? Maybe this has become a heated yes, sir. Please.
My name is Ryan from the Sandra University. The whole discussion is all about this formal education. But in Indonesia, if we try to link educational development or building skill to economic development, then we have to think about the farmers, we have to think about the skill of local workers and how to upgrade the skills. And I think it's important to think out of the box that those people who go all the way to university actually, more or less, they come from privileged families. They have high quantitative or any quantitative skill. But majority of the Indonesian, actually the poor, 67% of the poorest poor are in agriculture sector or they are rural workers. So I would like to actually ask your view or opinion on what do you think, what kind of education? Because education should not be privileged to those who can enroll to formal institutions only. What kind of education do you think to be provided by the government or by the society to the poor farmers? So Indonesia ran a massive training like farmer school, and for the rural workers, like those who live on minimum wages. How do you help these people? If, like the sample of the math question that Daniel put before, I don't think that the people, I mean, you don't need all of those mathematical complications to be able to earn something, right? So, is there any program or educational program that can be offered to upgrade the skill of global workers, for example, which is around 40% of the Indonesian labor force? Yes.
Thank you very much. Would anybody like to answer that?
I can't answer that, but I can just throw out a couple of points about I believe, in the Indonesian education system, as well as
the local content, but as I understand it, it's often very difficult at the local level for them to develop a local content that really makes sense. And I guess one of the problems is, if we talk about what sort of education do you give to farmers or to low-skilled people in the cities, if we tell the farmers we're going to help you grow rice better, those kids are going to say, we don't want to grow rice, we want to move to the cities. And so I think there's a real problem here. The assumption that, in the rural areas we should be teaching people to farm better when a lot of them actually have aspirations that are quite different from that. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's a real issue.
You don't have to talk too much. Mama?
Well, for the university, I think we have a student program we call KKN, Student Community Services. This is one of the activities that students can help farmers the community in the remote area, because for instance, Kacamada, for instance, send every year approximately 8,000 students to the villages throughout Indonesia, especially in Papua and perbatasan, and they work with community, helping the local community under the support of many institutions. This is one way to do it.
Any more questions or statements? Or that's it? Okay. Well, this has been a very interesting discussion from all of you who attended and all of the speakers here. I say thank you very much for your attendance and also for all of the speakers for sharing. We do hope that there's going to be a major change in the Indonesian curriculum for the better of the Indonesian generation, our next generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marisa, Pak Kevin, Pak T, Promo, and Pak Pratikno. The moment we started to discuss about the sad state of affairs of our education, it rained heavily outside. So it's quite gloomy outside. Our education system. But I don't want us to leave the room, with a very gloomy perceptions of, where things are. At least there is one learning center that does not do very badly at the international level. For 4 years now, CSIS has been on the top 10 think tank, in the world. Also, 34, of 100 top think tanks in the world. So at least, we can have something. But unfortunately, we are more as users of the educational products that universities and because we recruit those who graduate. And I agree with Pak Hadi that over the last 10 years, it's become more and more difficult actually to find a good graduate who can actually articulate, formulate the thought, and put it in writing. That's a major, I think, problem that we face, at least in this research and because it's not really easy to find somebody who can be a good researcher, good policy oriented academics or analysts. Well, at least we start the discussion. I think this book, of course, is going to be very useful. But not get there, but I'm sure last year in Canberra you guys will discuss at length. So hopefully we can continue this. But for sure, next year we will have another launching. And I think the theme for the Indonesian update this year is about regional autonomy. This is something another exciting topic that we will have a lot of discussion about next year. And also the Hadi Soesastro lecture will continue next year. And then of course all of you will get invitation. And in fact, those who still stay until 5:15 will get the priority to receive the invitation. Let's also demonstrate how interested Indonesians on Indonesian education. I remember when we had the discussion and the launching of the political update of 2009, immediately after the elections, around 100 people actually stayed all the way to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, simply because we're talking about who's going to be the president, who's going to be the minister of this and so on that. So it is a huge gap because people are still not interested in real issues such as education or other issues that I think are more important than who will be the president, because the country can be autopilot basically. So again, with that, I would like to thank everybody. But please allow me to use this opportunity to thank all the CSIS staff, especially because they were very hard under the coordination of Ibu Nancy, Director for General Affairs, to make this room until yesterday at 4 o'clock. Some of the bathroom were not functioning yet. So it's actually last night. So everything is fixed for this building and also for this auditorium. So I would like to thank all of the CSI staff for their hard work in order to make it possible for us to have this first public event in this new building in the old CSI site. Thank you.